Asking the first question. How have you managed to adapt this classical play into a comedy?
Yeah, good question. There is quite a lot of comedy in the book, coming from the characters. It's a lot of larger-than-life characters. So it's a tragic story, but along the way, there are kind of funny situations and funny characters. And the comedy that we do is springs more from the attempt of the four of us trying to realize this tragedy on the stage as well. So it's four of us, we play a multitude of characters, and it's this big challenge that we put for ourselves and our struggle to succeed that brings the comedy in it.
Kind of the situation itself and coming to terms with it, it's kind of the comedy which just springs out and is evoked. So therefore I follow up with, what type of comedy would you describe it as? Or is it a range of comedies? Or?
Funny comedy.
Of course.
Funny comedy.
Hilarious comedy. No, it's not, we say it's not a spoof or it's not a send-up. So we are kind of being genuine about it.
We're trying to be true to the novel, but our attempts as four sort of slightly inadequate people to realise the novel is what the comedy comes from.
A play which has a nice, true storyline to it, but also elements of comedy with relief through it, or describe?
It's kind of a gentle comedy, I will say. And it's kind of very open and human, and it's not joke. I think it's more springs from the situation of it, and our attempt to kind of, I don't know, soften this tragedy and try to bring we want to put a happy ending in this tragic history, and that's what we drive to, and then things change. But this, in our attempt to serve the story and to serve our imaginations that we kind of felt, but it's not crash jokes, or, I don't know, it's difficult to describe.
We're trying to be true to the novel, the four actors who we sort of play as ourselves, but we're probably not quite up to the job, and I think that's where a lot of the comedy comes. But we're genuinely trying to be true to the novel and not to make a spoof of Madame Bovary.
Okay. In that case, I'll bring it to the second question of, what's your favourite part about your characters? Or I know there's a range of characters, or favourite character in that case.
Well, my favorite part is do some magic tricks.
Of course.
But in this play is a metaphor for something else. But yeah, I kind of enjoy doing that bit.
Yourself?
I quite enjoy bottle feeding a lamb.
What? Of course.
Which is entirely relevant to the story. Not necessarily in the original Flaubert, but I think it's true to the spirit of the book.
You sold it to me.
There you go, you see? Bit of livestock
and
hand feeding.
And the kind of style of the performance, is it a naturalistic style? Is it very over the top? Is it very...
Well, you do a very naturalistic...
Well, I think it's a mixture,
heightened.
really. I think some of it is quite broad and quite, I wouldn't say slapstick, but quite bold, and then some of it is really, especially as we're getting closer and closer to the end of the novel, becomes more and more naturalistic, and the two clash together.
No, definitely, that by the end of the play, there's no required effort needed, that the audience is so engaged by this point that you can just appreciate the more naturalistic style of it.
Well, hopefully by that stage the audience will go wherever you take them.
Continuing that question, what's your favourite part of the play or favourite character?
Well, I mainly played Madame Bovary's husband, who either doesn't know what's going on right beneath his nose in terms of Madame Bovary getting more and more into debt and having affairs, or knows and tries to, just has his head in the sand, doesn't want to sort of believe it's actually going on. So there's sort of comic value in that, because it's slightly ridiculous. It's a bit like that Armstrong and Miller sketch. I don't know if you've ever seen that, where
I think, yeah.
one of them comes home and one of them's having a bondage session with his wife, and he walks in on that, and then somehow the person having the bondage session with his wife has to try and convince him that he's not, that it's all completely above board and it's all absolutely fine. It's worth looking up on YouTube. It's a great sketch. There's a scene that Emma and I do right at the beginning where we are we're both kind of attracted, well, we are attracted to each other, but it's us in a slightly awkward, useless, embarrassing way, trying to begin a relationship, which everyone can relate to.
Oh yeah, definitely. We won't go into my freshers. Anyway, so the show.
So that scene is probably, I have a lot of fun doing that scene.
That sounds very interesting. Next, I'll follow up with what actually, it's more to the kind of brings that question. What attracted you towards this original play book in the first place? What was the key striking theme, issue within it that just made you think there's something that fascinates me and lures me into it?
Well, it was my idea, and it's a Madame Bovary is a classic. It's in sort of top 100 or top 10 sort of seminal books of all time, or also those surveys would have it. And so there was something intriguing about why it has that longevity and why people are still interested in it. And also there's quite conflicted feelings about, so people that have read it often read it again later on in their life and they get something else out of it. None of the characters are particularly, that are easy to warm to, or none of the main characters. So that feels really bold as a piece of literature, and it feels very real and realistic and true to life. Not that people in everyday life are not likeable, but it doesn't hold back. It doesn't try to paint a sort of what's the word I'm looking for? A sort of rosy picture of character. It doesn't. It's honest.
Yeah, it kind of finds the honest truth in our lives that we try and hide from, or very much in British society try and hide from, and exposes us, and it kind of by the end makes us kind of confront it. Would you say?
I mean, hopefully it resonates. Yeah, with. I mean, it feels contemporary in that it's about morals and being in struggling within unhappy relationships. That always feels sort of relevant. People getting into debt, people, and Madame Bovary having dreams about what her life might become, and then her life not living up to those expectations. So those sorts of themes felt very pertinent, and also I sort of fell in love with Madame Bovary, with the character, because she's not easy to get on with, but there's an incredible sort of richness to her.
Now, carrying on from that idea of Madame Bovary, I find when I read the book that I found it fascinating about the thing was this. I couldn't make up my mind that is it kind of celebrating or attacking kind of someone's desires and ambitions in terms of what they want to be? Is it kind of making someone guilty for these desires of this is very vanity and vain and there should be more realistic and appreciative? Or is it more that actually we all have these desires in the dreams and we should actually, there's nothing wrong being curious about it? I'm just interested in which side you guys would take.
Flaubert doesn't say this is how you should feel about this. It's this happens and this happens and this happens. And I think I read a little bit about his life, which was quite bold and dissolute. And I don't think he's making any judgment at all. I think he's just saying this is how human beings are. And we have desires and appetites and disappointments and just sometimes you should follow them. But you know, I think if you follow them to the nth degree, you could drive yourself nuts.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe a bit of moderation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But the whole, I mean, people make and still do make judgments about Emma Bovary being promiscuous and whether she should be allowed to be. And it's if it was a 500-page novel about a man who had 2 affairs, I don't think that the strapline for it would be man
has 2 affairs.
Has 2 affairs, which seems to be the case with this book. And admittedly, that's what drew sort of outrage to the book when it was first written. But it feels that it's clear now that it's much more than that. You know, that's almost almost irrelevant, I suppose, in terms of in terms of what the book is trying to talk about. I mean, yes, she happens to have 2 affairs, but it's not
so black and white. It kind of explores it more and allows the affairs itself to have not justification but explanation, and for the audience to make up their own mind.
Absolutely, but I'm still. What surprised me the other night, we had a Q&A, a really good Q&A here, and someone said, "Oh, do you think she's too promiscuous?" And for me, being my age when I was born, that sort of judgment, I thought that sort of judgment had stopped. So I think it's, you know, it's still the case. You know, if you're a woman, you do that, you're a bit of a tart. If you're a guy, you do it, you're a bit of a lad.
Definitely.
And that's something that's been discussed 30 years ago. So I think that's quite interesting.
No, it's very interesting to see the gender roles in today's stuff, especially people around my age and stuff, and the student audience who'll be watching this beautiful interview, and therefore come and see it. But like, it's just that interesting how different social expectations on different genders. And personally, myself, I love that society where we don't have these, but it's debatable. It's true from 1850 onwards to now. There's still elements within it, but yeah, like without the kind of expectations of female relationships and male and what's expected sexually or relationship wise.
Yeah.
I mean, the another challenge for us was how to make a comedy out of a tragedy, and as Emma was saying earlier, it's with this type of show or this type of company, this isn't Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders. It's not like a sketch show type relationship with the text where you're basically taking the piss out of it. It's much more about the company of actors saying, why don't we put on Madame Bovary? We've only got a small amount of money, but we can do it. You know, we can compete with the National Theatre. It's got loads of money. All you need is you know, we can use this bit of set, and we've got this massive chicken that we can put on stage, and that will surprise audiences. And so it's about the sort of enterprise of let's do this, let's go for it. And at no point did they have the meeting where they sat down and went, this is ridiculous. We're never going to be able to pull this off. It's only 4 people. There's 30 characters, and you're grappling